You will sleep better than you have ever slept. You've never been this relaxed. Are you ready to change your life? I'm Rusty Diamond, certified hypnotist. You don't need to leave your house. You can stay in your bed. You can stay in your favorite chair. You just need a computer or your phone. You can get a hold of me. Stay at home. I'll make your life better.
Hypnosisisgreat.com.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Yo, man. Boom, it's Rusty. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the Pup Podcast, here on the Rusty Diamond Podcast Network. And I am your host. My name is Rusty Diamond. And Monday. Mondays are cool. Monday mornings, hell yeah. First thing in the morning, up here doing some a podcasting because that's what is up. That's what is up. And if you are listening to this and you want to know what myself or the guest might look like, you can go onto YouTube or Rumble, search the Public Access Podcast, and it'll pop up. There'll be a lot of episodes. If you're watching this and you hate looking at my face, but you love my guests and you love the content, then you can easily go pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts and search the Public Access Podcast. You will have to see my face though on the whatever it's called, the little picture of the podcast. My face is on that, but it's little, so you don't have to see it a lot. So thank you everyone for being here. That's what matters. And it's time for me to bring on my special guest. My special guest is right here and right now. And my special guest right here and right now is Becca Engle. Becca, thanks for being here. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Pretty darn good. I like my Monday mornings, so it works out pretty well. Yeah, like what you gonna do? What you gonna do on a Monday? You got to get back to it. Not that I don't know if I really have any days off. I don't know if I'm a days off kind of guy, but what you gonna do? I don't know. So yeah, so then okay. Uh, so you're one of the younger people I've had on my show, I guess, is kind of the thing, which is cool. So what was your idea to go into jump into kind of the podcasting world and be like, hey, I'm gonna go uh get on because you were doing a bunch of other stuff as
Mhm.
well. But so was podcast kind of the next easy jump, or what was that?
I guess I was invited on podcasts before I even like attempted to try to get on podcast, all the time. And I had fun with it and I was like, hey, why not support people with podcasts and share my story? And my story is unique. And it's interesting, and I feel like I have a lot to talk about outside of the typical topics. So I was like, I'm gonna put myself out there, and if people want me on their podcast, I'll go ahead and take the opportunity. And if they don't, they don't. So I was like, it's a way to promote myself, and it's a way to help. Uh, I guess you could call it a small business.
Sure. Podcast being the small business.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's some work, but so that has that caused you to be like, I want my own podcast, or are you good just hopping on other people's shows for now?
So, funny enough, I do have access to a media room because of my office space. I have been told that I should start a podcast desperately, probably over and over again, and I've been told by hundreds that they'd watch it. I just don't think I'm that entertaining. And I don't know what I talk about all the time, so I'm like, I don't know. And also, I just have a lot on my plate, so it's like, do I have room to fit that in, or is that a priority when I can just go on shows when I have the time?
Right. But I mean, with the podcast, you can do it when you have time. You don't have to have a set kind of schedule for it unless you'd want that. But I mean, and we have hundreds of people who are saying they want you to do a podcast. I mean, that seems like that would be someone who thinks that you're interesting and wants to watch you. So I don't know. But I mean, yeah, you can only do so much on your plate, and there's no reason to overload your plate if you don't need to. Um, because it's easy to get burnout on things, and like I've been burnt out on this podcast before, and yeah, just sometimes take on too much stuff, and it's good that you know kind of how much you can take on. Is that kind of something that you've learned how to do, or is that something you've just kind of always known?
Yeah, so I've always taken on way too much and I still do, honestly. But so I still don't know how to not take on too much. But uh I guess the assumption is there just because I do have limits on what I take on. I guess I think of all the pros and cons with each situation, and I'm like, okay, like someone could record this and use it against me in the future, things like that. So I've just kind of, um, not I guess I think about how that item will apply to me in the future, and then I either take it on or I don't. Um, but in this case, I do still take on way too much. I sit on 6 nonprofit boards. I'm all over the place. I'm working full time. It never ends. So,
Yeah, I mean that'll do it. For sure. And so then you said something earlier. You said that you were worried about like what you were saying on there and you didn't want
mhm.
someone using that. I mean, so do you think about that like you might you are you like you're holding something back like sometimes when you're talking like from what you might say, or are you is it more that you don't aren't positive what you're saying or not sure what may be different down the line as far as could be used? Because I mean, yeah, I mean, with you being younger, like it wasn't really a thing, like of my age, like before, like there wasn't really the everything's on the internet, like kind of a deal. So I guess it is something to kind of think about. So that's something that's kind of come up with you.
Um, I guess it's just like, the cancer culture and everything, I've seen people get canceled for the stupidest stuff that like makes no sense, and posted about, and I've even got posted about, and I'll laugh at the post and find it hilarious, but also at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, if people like have that mindset, how many people have that mindset, about a topic, and then I freak out and I get real self-conscious about people not liking me, and I've definitely worked on that. However, I think about the people who don't like me before I think about the people who like me sometimes, and so I guess I just have that mindset, regarding, you know, doing some things. I'm like, "Okay, what will my haters think of this?" And I not saying it's a good thing, or what will people that hate me think of this, and, I I panic a little.
And it's understandable. And I mean, the I mean, the weird thing is, I mean, the thing about the haters is that they're the ones that are going to be probably tuning into you more than anybody, which is the weird thing
Mm-hmm.
in a weird way. And I don't know. It's an interesting culture we live in now. And so then I don't know. So like when you're on something where it's kind of free form, then what like I don't know. Do you have to kind of meticulously think about what you're going to say for the most part? Like on like if you're doing a live speech or something or something to that effect to make sure that everything's all right. And is that in your nature or is that kind of against your nature to do things have it fully thought out, or do you like to go and talk, just whatever comes up?
Well, I guess I'm very unfiltered. I've never had a filter. I've been made fun of that my whole life. I was nonverbal till 5 years old, and so I talk a lot. So my mom tends to make jokes about how I'm making up for time by just never shutting up, which I tends to be the case. I definitely don't have a filter, and I can talk about anything. And I don't think I'm necessarily about what I say when I say it, which is the whole reason is because I don't think about what I say before I say it. I don't think about how other people interpret it. I just assume that there could be some stupid interpretation. So, I and there's sometimes where I'll say something and people are like, again, autistic, people are like, "Hey, that was really offensive," and I'm like, "Oh," or vice versa. They're like, or I'll think something is going to be offensive and I don't do it, and then I'll talk to a friend about it, and they'll be like, nobody would care. Like, so, I mean, I feel like I have a misinterpretation sometimes of something that is offensive and not offensive, so I just avoid trying to do it at all. Uh, of course, I feel like everything I talk about when I am on other people's podcasts is very um straight to the point, like my personal life story or my personal experiences. And if I made every single podcast episode that I recorded on my personal experiences and my personal life story, people would be kind of like, okay, I've heard the same story and we're on episode 600, you know? So, um, doing it on different podcasts, I know I'm hitting different audiences with similar or same story about me.
Yeah. And so then, yeah, I mean, I also didn't want to like have you come on and, have to tell the same story over and over again. Because I don't know if, like, for me, it can get tough sometimes to tell the same story over and over. I like telling my story, but I don't know, I like having a little bit of variation in it and, you know, having that. But some people have a story and they got it and they can just stick right to it and, be able to get it out on everyone's different podcasts. And so okay, so then okay, and you said you were nonverbal till you were 5.
Hmm.
And then okay. So were you in school then? Like at 5? Is that when you went to school? And then
Yeah, so I started school at 2 years old, almost 3 years old, in the what they call the early intervention program for special needs. It depending on where you are. Um, in Texas, it's called early childhood special education, and in Florida, where I lived at the time, it was called early intervention program, EIP.
oh
And
okay.
then I was, at least at the time, I don't know what it's called now. Uh, this was 2003, so who knows what's changed. But yeah, and
Yeah.
5 years old is when I kind of made the transition from Florida to Oklahoma. So it's definitely been an interesting way of, you know.
Yeah. And So then when you got there, was it the new school that kind of, because I mean, is that something like that you remember, I guess? Um, or is it kind of like I guess it's probably one of those things like one of your first memories, probably. Is that right? Or is that not really right?
Yeah, so, I remember parts of it, but also my whole life, every time I achieved something, it was like, guess what? You remember when you were nonverbal? Like literally my whole life. Like from the first point on, like when I graduated, like, the fifth grade, or when I did an accomplishment in third grade, because third grade we did the wax museum and they actually gave me a character that spoke sign language, which is like you pretend to be like someone who's dead and talk about them. Really
Yeah.
creepy, but um, I um they actually gave me Helen Keller's teacher because they knew that Helen Keller's teacher, Annie, spoke sign language. So they were like, we're gonna give you a character that speaks sign so that you can sign if you forget how to use your words, which
Well,
made sense. But you know,
wow.
I when my mom came and you tap the shoulder and you say it, I said everything, perfectly clear. Um, with a really bad speech impediment. Uh, but
And
like my whole life, it's been hit back on me. Like, oh, remember when you were nonverbal?
so, I
So,
mean, is that something that comes up then? I mean, is it kind of like, like, fuck, like, yeah, yeah, I know, or is it like, okay, yeah, but, or is it like, don't bring that up?
no, I mean, I think it depends on the person who brings it up. Like, were they there when I was nonverbal? Were they, did they leave my life when I was nonverbal? Like, what are we thinking about? Because, like, I'll tell you this much, like, my dad's side of the family, not my dad, I love my dad. Like, if they used it or said it ever, I'd be like, you weren't even there. Like, why do you care? Um, but
Yeah.
then, like, if my parents bring it up, I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, yeah, that's crazy, Um, I guess it happens less now. Um, but like they bring that up less now. They bring up like more recent experiences, but up until like, ninth, 10th grade or 12th grade, like it was brought up all the time. Like anytime I accomplished something, it was like, remember when you were supposed to? Remember when you were nonverbal? Because like doctors said things to me that were just absolutely insane.
And I mean, that sounds like that's something that's stuck with you since then. And so then, I mean, what do you feel about those doctors now? Do you feel like they're, I don't know, like you were wrong, or like you were doing your job, or like okay, like or like screw you, or whatever, or I don't know, does that ever come up?
Oh, with my doctors? Is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, like
Yeah.
from yeah, what they were saying, what you thought, or what they
So
thought.
it's funny. I guess you kind of have to know how it started, but of course, I was very against everything that they were saying, and I'm not against modern medicine or anything. I definitely, think we need to advocate for that, but I always agree that we should try certain things first, and we should actually analyze the whole child and not do weird analysis. Like I'll tell you this much: one of my occupational therapists put blocks in front of me. Okay, said deal with these
Oh,
blocks. And I did. And then they ripped the blocks out of my hands at 3 years old. And they said, yep, she's autistic because I cried. Just saying, any 3-year-old that I can think of, if I put blocks in front of them, told them to build, and then destroyed their tower after about 5 minutes, they would cry.
yeah, that's kind of pretty messed up. Like that's I don't know. Could that reminds me like who does something like that to I mean that's just like to get that up reaction, like what reaction were they expecting to get? Like I mean, if there was no reaction, just like sitting there staring at fucking whatever, like, and that would be different. But like, I mean, sure, you'd be upset, like, if something, I don't know, like, fucking, there's this old thing, this old wrestling thing, like this guy, he was called the $1 Million Man, and they had this thing out there, like, if this kid could dribble a ball 15 times in a row, then he'd get $100. And so like the kid's dribbling, he gets to 14, and then the guy kicks it away on 14. And I mean, like, it's just a messed up thing. And so, like, have you like ever looked into that? Is that something that's kind of common practice for testing, doing something like that, or do you know anything about that?
It's definitely not. Um,
Okay, that's
and there's
good.
a lot of things that weren't common practice in my diagnosis, or that have changed. I mean, the DSM has changed a time and a half since my diagnosis, and that's only been in 20 years, which is the whole entire diagnosis basis. Less than 20.
Oh, okay. Oh, lost you for a second.
Modified. So, you know, how I was tested, I'm sure, and what I've looked up is completely different than what they do now. I mean, the diagnosis is even different. I was diagnosed with 4 different things, and all 4 of those things now are just diagnosed as autism.
Um, do you think that's good, or do you think that's going to be problematic and just kind of puts more people under one umbrella?
I honestly, I can see why, but I feel like while autism is a spectrum, I feel like some of the changes were good. I feel like with me though, I feel like we do need to specify, the processing disorders and the um, where the disability is at in some case. I do like that we got rid of certain terminology that was used in the DSM-4 to revise. However, um, because when I was diagnosed, we saw autism like this. There's a box, and then you were either here or you were here or you were here, right?
Yeah.
Now, it looks like this, which is like just a circle, and then it's, like you're a little bit in this triangle, you're a little bit in this piece of pie, you're a little bit in this piece of pie, you're a little bit in this piece of pie. So like I like that concept. Um, but I feel like we can say something falls under the autism spectrum and be like, under this autism spectrum, she has these things without getting rid of the terminology altogether.
Right. And I mean, with testing and stuff, so I had someone on, I don't know, everything is kind of a blur, maybe a few months ago or so, but like, she was saying that the testing should be done by someone who is in that circle, um, as opposed to like a psychologist or something to that effect. Just kind of so it's like be able to see it, like, oh, okay, like that's something that I do, and I can see that, and not just sort of someone is who hasn't really experienced any of that, just sort of guessing. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? Uh-oh. I'm having
That we
trouble. Can you repeat that?
oh,
I'm getting I think
it's
you
like
the
glitching on
internet's
my end. I apologize. Psychiatrists and all diagnosed it with the fact that is my internet. It shouldn't be glitching. It's on. Um, anyway, I think we're good now, hopefully.
okay. Yeah.
Um, so I like the fact that psychiatrists diagnose it. And I like the fact that They're the ones who do it. However, I would agree with the fact that maybe someone who is a neurodivergent psychiatrist or someone with autism and is a psychiatrist would be further qualified to diagnose than someone who um, is just a psychiatrist. But I've said the same thing about special education teachers. I feel like I'll give this example. I was in a classroom the other day and there was an autistic meltdown, and every single step of that meltdown, I was like, oh, yeah, she's in this phase. This is how she's mentally feeling. This is where she's mentally at. And I could analyze the whole entire meltdown and remember myself as a kid. And I saw different steps of this meltdown, and typically you'll see a rise, and then you'll see just crazy reactions with movements of the body, whether that be just wiggling, or if they have clothes that they tend to be uncomfortable in, like their shoes, socks, they'll start throwing them across the room, or they'll start throwing them or taking them off. Things that are overstimulating to them on top of the emotions that they're feeling. And then after following that, they'll end up having a breakdown and they'll be embarrassed and they'll go cry, or they'll go react or hide. And so I was watching this child break down, and this child got to the breakdown point where they hadn't harmed anyone at this point. They did try to punch someone, but it was like I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I have to do this.
Yeah.
Went under the table and started crying. Once they got into the table and started crying is when the teacher actually went and started, like, I would have just left the child there, let this child calm down if that's their safe space, because the child wasn't causing harm by being under that table. This person proceeded to literally drag the child out of under the table and throw them in a dark room and call it a sensory room.
Is
From
that
my
something they
understanding,
do?
yeah, that is legal. If it's called a sensory room, they're allowed to put the child in there. It's
What
as
the?
long as it's more than 50 square feet and it's not locked. It's not considered abuse. So I know it's ridiculous. Um, Hence my passion for ed policy. Um, it's
Holy shit.
ridiculous. And that is not just a Texas law, that is US wide. That isn't federally legal. Um, in some parts of Texas and some parts of other states, it's also legal while they're in that room to beat them, if you choose to. So her mother, that was also a teacher at the school for special education, came in and started beating her daughter across the wall, slamming her daughter's face across the wall.
Wait, the mom did
However,
this, you said?
yes,
Okay.
that is also a teacher at the school. Um, and I was horrified. The thing is when we get into that meltdown phase, a lot of the time it's activated by something that someone around us has done. This child was told not to do an action in a very rude way. Uh, and this action could have easily been solved by a conversation because it wasn't harmful to anybody. It was simply waking up another child, and that was sleeping. And all that had to be done was, hey, come here, let's talk about bad sleeps at night and let's learn about this. It could have been done. The problem would have been solved. Instead, the other teachers in the room screamed at her and started insulting her in her recent meltdowns. And this triggered a response. Obviously, my teachers were bullying me. I would, of course, trigger a response. Maybe more control because I know how to communicate, but a child with autism does not know how to effectively communicate all the time. And they tend to miss out on certain verbal cues or explanations. So it was a very interesting analysis, and everyone in this room, I'm assuming, was not autistic, just because I told them that I was, and they kind of freaked out. I was just a substitute, but um, you, you know, response to what was going on, just and how I processed it versus how they processed it, even though we're all in the same career, and I'm technically less qualified right now. was very interesting. And I feel like I take the same response with psychiatrists. Like, yeah, they're qualified and they know a lot, but can they really analyze each and every step at a personal level? Probably not.
Right. Um, okay. And so, okay. So you said that you would do like the substitute and the special ed, uh, is like, so are you at like what is it? Because like I did it where I was like a substitute for the substitute helper, one of those. Is
Mhm.
that what that wasn't? Are you like at like, so is there like a few teachers in there in the special ed class?
Yeah, so due to the child, there's legal ratios that there has to be like 1 on 6 or 1 on 4, depending on the disability, or 1 on 1 even. So typically in your special ed classes, you'll have multiple units with multiple teachers.
Okay. And yeah. So yeah, and I mean it's hard to get the yeah, someone who doesn't really understand. So I mean like having someone who as yourself, you know, does understand it better than others. Is that something that the school will seek out, or are you just an anomaly that kind of popped in there and then they're like, oh hell yeah, we have someone here who can, you know, understand better what's going on.
So for subbing, you just kind of take a job and hop into it. So they don't know anything about you when you take the job. They just know that you were hired by the district and you've passed a background check. But outside of that, they don't know anything about you. Uh, and then I think for my teaching job that I'm starting in the fall, I do think that that was sought out. Because I was in the middle of the interview for another position that was, I guess, less hands-on with children with disability. It's hands-on with children with disability, but not as far in, meaning that I was going to be working with people that maybe weren't as severe with things, or just needed extra help, but they could comprehend the regular curriculum at a full basis. Um, and I was about mid-interview, and the story briefly to I really just said I was on an IEP, which is the education document that you're on as a special ed child. I said that, and she was like, and I started talking about teaching child with special needs, because in order to be in this position, I would have had to teach 1 on 1 with child with special needs. Um, and she immediately heard that, and she was like, she stopped the whole interview and then ended up interviewing me for a harder position that actually pays more, that's more extreme, and was like, I need you in this position. Like, I haven't had someone in this position for 4.5 years, because she's been specifically looking for someone that has been in that child's shoes. And so I think for my actual job, uh my differences were sought out. I do think the more in in more cases in my life when it comes around teaching, my differences have been the reason that I haven't been able to get positions. So I tend to avoid bringing them up unless it makes sense in my conversation now. I used to kind of just say I had it because I thought it was like, oh, you're more relatable to the child. However, that tends not to be the case, or neurotypical populations don't fully understand how you're using it as an asset.
Interesting. Um, so how'd you find that out? Did you were you just not getting the same response or the same like callbacks and stuff for more interviews and then just dropped it for a little bit, and then found this job and thought, you know, hey, like this is something I can, you know, use what I know.
So, I've been consistently applying for jobs since January. I applied for 67 jobs. I got a lot of interviews and then I got offers from multiple schools. Um, so and I I didn't obviously in my in my application I didn't bring it up. I only brought it up in interview if it made sense. And it wasn't that I wasn't getting callbacks from that. I in my undergrad I was an education major and I was in it from 2021 to 2023. And in 2021 I applied to do my like let's get you in the classroom internship so you can graduate type thing.
Yeah.
And I was told, and which is a year and a half, and I was told, sorry, we don't like you. That's not happening. And I was like, why? And they were like, we don't like the way you talk. And I was like,
Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
professor's responses was one of my professor's responses was, you need to learn to mask. And so immediately I
Oh
knew
shit.
that autism was the conversation of why I couldn't communicate effectively. Come 2022, at the end of 2022, they met with me and they were like, hey, we do want to accept you into the program and we do want to do this, but you're going to be on a special plan. And I said, sure. And so I was going to follow the plan. Uh, the plan never happened. I was in the program, but the plan never happened. Um, and then about 8 months later, that August or that September, they sat me down in 2023, which is more recently, they sat me down in a room and they attacked every single autistic trait I have. Eye contact, sensory appearance, stimming, um, communication, uh, way of wording things. Um, Not with kids, by the way. This was in my regular adult classes. Um, And so none of the people in this room had actually seen me teach children. Everyone analyzing me was only analyzing me based off people my actually older than me in my classes, because I was always a year or two younger than everyone I was in class with because I was ahead in college and I skipped the 11th grade. So um, everyone in my classes could drink and things, and I couldn't. So a whole social aspect of my life was brought out. I mean, it was illegal for me to enter a bar until September. Um, so, one of the things that they attacked me on too was that I wasn't going out with my classmates like after class. And so I lacked friendship, I lacked wanting to make friends, I lacked social communication, I lacked friendliness and all this stuff. And I said, it was illegal for me. Like I couldn't be in a dorm room with alcohol. I would have been kicked out of school. And then I was like, and then and I'm sure all of the people over 21 had alcohol in their dorm room, so why start a problem? Um,
Right.
and then I said, all the parties have alcohol. I couldn't attend those because they were on campus. Again, against campus policy. I was an RA, so I would have had to mandatory report it. Even so, I just said, I'm not even going to show up because why risk it?
Yeah.
Uh, and why put people in that position? Like, why? I don't want to cause harm. I will say they had plenty of people under 21 at these things, but if they weren't, and wasn't there. And then, I couldn't go to bars with them, which is where they went because they were again like at night after class, where do people go? Like,
Yeah.
so it was just
Well,
all these things. And so I guess that's where
hold
I
on.
left, like, don't bring it up.
The audio just got weird.
Okay.
Let me mute you for a second and let me let me try this, see what's going on. Okay.
I have 5 bars, so I don't know why it's
Yeah, I don't know what's going on either. Yeah, mine says that I don't know. Oh well, but okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just started
okay.
sounding weird. it still sounds kind of weird, but what you gonna do, I guess. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. And we were saying that, do you remember where we were right there before I cut you off?
Yeah. So all these things were just like things I did outside of the classroom, not teaching, that they were attacking me on. And one of the things, part of my other disability, I do have three physical disabilities in my feet and my legs. And I actually had to uh like work on my mobility when I got them because it was very hard to walk. Um, and so I can't drive long distances. And one of the things that they wanted to do was put me an hour and a half away from my house to student teach. And I was like, I can't drive that far. Like, that's not safe. I was like, I can't drive more than 30 minutes. I was like, and then every 30 minutes, I'm required to stop and like take a break because if not, my feet go numb. Like, so that would be a
Yeah.
3 hour drive every morning for me. And I was like, that's a very, I was in elementary reports at 6 a.m., elementary teacher. So I would have had to leave my house at 3 in the morning to
Oh,
do this. And
yeah.
so they obviously they told me that they would work on accommodations. They still put me an hour away, but it was a little better. So in order to do my student teaching, I left at 4 a.m. every morning. I woke up about 2, or left at 4, and then about 6 weeks into this, um, they said, "Sorry, we don't like you," and sat me down in this meeting and insulted every trait of my disability. The 2 teachers that actually analyzed my actual teaching and were in the classroom with me came into this meeting as well, and they were like, "What? What?" And they were all confused, about these, professors' assertions, and they praised me, and they kept cheering me on and telling me how great of a student I was, and trying to, root for me, the ones that actually saw me teach, including my almost none of them spoke English. This classroom of student teaching. I'm not bilingual. I never have been. Um, Unless you count sign, then I'm kind of bilingual. But really outside of that, I don't know how to communicate with Afghanistan. I don't know how to communicate with Iran. I don't know how to communicate with Iraq. I don't know how to communicate with Ukraine. And I don't
Yeah.
even have background knowledge to. However, these children were learning. These children were getting answers right in English with me teaching them, and I was simply doing full body communication, which is using your whole body to explain and describe things. Meaning that I'm mouthing it, I'm using my hands, I'm using my legs, I'm using my arms, like everything. Um, I was using my body, like if it said roll the ball, I was literally physically getting up and rolling a ball while talking to them about rolling a ball.
Yeah.
Children picked up very fast, and so I was praised on that. And I was even praised on my autism, being able to relate to struggling in school. Uh, and the teachers that had never, or the professors that had never seen me teach were like, "Yeah, we just don't like her," but they didn't say autism. They just tagged every trait of mine that was autistic.
Yeah.
Um, so I learned to kind of just not bring it up unless I feel safe to bring it up when meeting the person, which is why the only reason I bring it up in past interviews rather than bringing it up prior.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you made a uh, I mean, it wasn't, yeah. I mean, the fact that you're out of there is a good thing. It seems like there was not going to be a long-term conducive relationship with you and them. It seems like kind of great learning experience. Good. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that just seems like that's a bad an unfortunate situation. That sucks you had to deal with that.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, yeah, that's a tough one. That's kind of crappy, but I'm glad that you found one that is able to, and I'd say it's about a lot of things. There's for whatever you're in, there's always going to be some things that are crappy. Um, whether it be a job, whether it be uh, a doctor or counselor of some sort. And like, you can't really let like one one bad person totally turn you off, because it'd be easy to turn them off and just like, oh, that's just kind of how all these teachers are. But then you find one that works, and you're like, okay, well, maybe it was just that. Maybe they just sucked. And sometimes it's just like that. And but it's a good thing to learn and a good thing to get, and it makes you appreciate the other ones. Um, so let me bring it up here, or not bring it up, but wrap it up here. And so how are people going to find you on the internet, or if they want to work with you or book you or whatever else? How do they do that?
So you can find me on Instagram as re02.20, or Rebby Crafts. And then you can find me on Facebook also at Rebby Crafts, or you can find me at Becca Engle. Any of those will work.
Cool, excellent. And then so I thought of something. If you ever do get a podcast, and I think an angle that you could do where you would have a lot of guests would be to get other people who are teaching classes that, or have children in the classes that you're teaching. And I think that'd have like an unlimited number of guests. I don't think you'd ever run out of potential guests. If that's ever something you want to do, just an idea if you ever get to that point. I think that could be an uh, interesting angle, and good to be able to get the word out on that more, since that seemed like to be something that you were pretty passionate about. But just just an idea, not a go do it and put more on your plate. But yeah, if you get to that though. But thank you so much for being on the show. I'm glad we got to talk, and got to talk about whatever, not knowing where we're going to go, and get to where we got to.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. And hope you have a great rest of your day. All right.
You too.
All right. Thank you. All right. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
All right. That's Becca Engle. So hit her up, find her, work with her. And thank you everyone here for listening or watching. If you want to find out more about me, rustydiamond.net or hypnosisisgreat.com. That easy, that easy. So thank you, everyone. And that is the show, man. Boom.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.